One of the greatest Jewish leaders of pre-war Europe was Rav Meir Shapiro. He was a revolutionary educator, and he had strong ideas about how to improve education. One of his ideas, which set off and which took off incredibly in the Jewish world and which is practiced to today, is the Daf HaYomi, the daily study of a double folio of the Talmud, so that after 7 years, one would have completed the entire Talmud. And today there are thousands and thousands of people across the globe who are studying the Talmud every single day. But what he really gave his life for was the building of a yeshiva in Poland. Rav Meir Shapiro was very concerned about the lot of yeshiva students in Poland. They weren't treated well. There were no dormitories in the yeshivas. They had to share people's homes. They had to go and beg for meals. They were looked down upon. And his idea was to create a yeshiva which had everything. It had a dormitory, it had eating facilities, it had a library, it had a place to study. But of course, he had to raise the money. And for many, many years, he went around Europe, he went to America, and he built until eventually he built and he put together the famous yeshiva in Lublin. It was called Yeshivat Chachmei Lublin, a massive yeshiva. In fact, the building still stands there today in Lublin. It was taken over by the Nazis during World War II, but it was an enormous yeshiva of several floors with wonderful dormitories and facilities and eating facilities and rooms and kitchens. And when it came time to open the yeshiva, Rav Meir of Lublin, Rav Meir Shapiro, decided he was going to have an enormous opening ceremony. Chanukah Habayit, the initiation of the new yeshiva. And he was going to invite all of the leading rabbinic scholars of Europe. He was going to invite other leaders and journalists. It was going to be a massive opening. Rav Meir Shapiro was very close to a Hasidic rabbi known as the Chortkova Rebbe. That was his rabbi. And the Chortkova Rebbe, when he heard about this, called in his student and he said to him, "It's a bad idea. I don't think that you should have such a big, grand opening ceremony." And I'll tell you why it's not such a good idea. Because of something that we learn in this week's parsha. The Torah tells us that when Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moses came down from the mountain after he had been there for 40 days, he discovered that the Jewish people were worshipping the golden calf. And he took those 2 tablets and he threw them down and he broke them. He then went up to the mountain for another period of 40 days to seek forgiveness for the Jewish people. And after those 40 days, Hashem said, "Fine, go and hew out a new set of tablets, bring them up to the mountain, and I will engrave them, and I will forgive the Jewish people." But this time, on this occasion, there was no fanfare. There was no lightning, there was no thunder, there were no big crowds. It was just Moshe and Hashem. Hashem speaking to Moshe and engraving the tablets. And Rashi says that this teaches us the importance of tzniut, of doing things in a modest way. Perhaps the reason why the first tablets were broken is because Hashem gave them over with such fanfare. Everyone was standing around the mountain. There was thunder, there was lightning, there was voices, there was the sound of the shofar. And when things are done in a very public way, it attracts the ayin hora, it attracts the evil eye and negativity. So therefore, the second time round, when the second tablets were given, it was given in a very, very private ceremony. And of course, those tablets were never broken. They exist today in the Aron HaKodesh in the Holy Ark. It's just that we don't know the location of the Holy Ark. So said the Chortkova Rebbe to Rav Meir Shapiro, that's why you shouldn't do it. Because when you do things with great fanfare and publicity, it attracts the evil eye and negativity. So why should you do it? Well, Rav Meir Shapiro was a very clever man. And he answered his teacher and he said, you're right. But let me ask you this. If that's true, why did Hashem give the first tablets with such fanfare? If he knew that something negative was going to happen, why did he do that? He must have had a reason to do that. And he said, I'll tell you why Hashem did that. Even though it was going to have a negative consequence, he had a very good reason. Because the world for many, many generations had sunken into a state of immorality and idolatry. And the world needed to be shaken up. And this was the way of Hashem shaking up the world. The entire world knew that the Torah was going to be given. And forget about negative consequences. Sometimes you just have to do something to make an impact. And that's what Rav Meir Shapiro said. Look at European Jewry at the moment. Look at the status of the Yeshiva Bocha. It's in a terrible state. And it doesn't matter if there are going to be negative consequences. And in fact, there were negative consequences because Rav Meir Shapiro died very soon after the opening of the yeshiva. And the yeshiva itself was only functioning for about 10 years before the Nazis took it over. But nevertheless, said Rav Meir Shapiro, we have to shake up the world. We have to show them about how important Torah learning was. And indeed, that's what happened. The great yeshiva was opened in Lublin to incredible fanfare. There were hundreds of people and all types of dignitaries. And at least for those few years, people saw the majesty of the Torah. But the message to us is when we do something, and especially our service of God, to do it as humbly and modestly as possible. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.